morning, good morning. Good morning, LinkedIn Live. How are we doing? Happy Friday to everyone. And good morning if you're watching us live on International Women's Day. Good morning, Rebecca.
Good morning, Cheryl. Happy International Women's Day to you.
Yeah, I feel so honoured. I've got the amazing Rebecca Scott, who I've known for a few years now through like the Black Talent Awards as a judge. But your day job, you are global resourcing manager, very experienced global resourcing lead for Jacobs. But disclaimer, obviously, the opinions shared here this morning by Rebecca are those of hers and not necessarily her organisation. So thank you so much for joining me, Rebecca, today.
Thank you for inviting me, Cheryl. And also, what I'm really chuffed about is when we first spoke about this and we were talking about the topic, that we were able to choose this topic on such an amazing day, International Women's Day today, Mother's Day on Sunday.
Absolutely. So, and just a bit of history. So the first International Women's Day, I don't know whether anybody knows, and please say good morning if you're listening to us. I know that a lot of people are busy off to International Women's Day events, but the first International Women's Day was 28th of February 1909, so it's been around for a long time, and it was in honour of the 1908 garment workers' strike, where women were protesting about working violations and all of that sort of thing. So that's first International Women's Day. But as you say, Rebecca, Mother's Day on Sunday, and I thought to myself, why is Mother's Day so early this year? And then morning, Marilo, I was like, why is Mother's Day so early? Mother's Day is early because it's tied to, in the UK anyway, it's tied to Lent and Easter, which I didn't know. I don't know whether you were aware of that, Rebecca.
I wasn't.
Yeah. It's Mother's Day is the fourth Sunday of Lent here in the UK, or 3 weeks before Easter Sunday. So that's why it's so early. So So good morning, Marilo Lesser. Thank you for joining us on International Women's Day. And what are you? I know you've got something quite special actually this weekend for Mother's Day. So what are you doing this weekend to mark it?
I do. I just want to say as well for International Women's Day, because I've been doing my research, that's when Jolie Brearley set up the website Pregnant Then Screwed on International Women's Day 2015.
Oh,
yeah,
amazing.
for women to send in their anonymous accounts of pregnancy discrimination. But to answer your question about what I'm doing on Sunday, my middle daughter, I've got 4 grown-up children, but my middle daughter, who also works at Jacobs, is taking me to see the exhibition Entangled Pasts where is it? It's
the Royal Academy.
And they've got an amazing sculpture outside representing senior Black figures from history, and then they've got a whole exhibition inside as well. So, and she's taking me for lunch, so I'm looking forward to that.
Fantastic! Oh my gosh, that's it for all of the children listening. That is what a proper Mother's Day treat sounds like. So you need to up your game.
Yes, well, I must admit she is the only one who hasn't got children, so maybe that's why we're getting the opportunity to go out together.
Yeah, fantastic. And then and we were talking about what we're doing for International Women's Day. So today, after this, I'm hot-footing it over to Birmingham, where there's a big International Women's Day expo and conference and all of that. I'm on a panel with some amazing women, the likes of Ritika, who you know, and some other women as well. So we're going to be doing that over in Birmingham. So let's get into the topic, and and it's a great suggestion for a topic, Rebecca, the motherhood penalty. So let's just get into what is the motherhood penalty. For those of you that are watching, if you haven't heard of it before, there's some great research that's come out literally even just this year actually on the motherhood penalty, and not even just in the UK, but like a global study talking about the pay gap specifically around the motherhood penalty. So Rebecca, lead us into this conversation. What is the motherhood penalty?
Okay, so first of all, I'm a mother of 4 grown-up children. So I can talk personally about my own experience of the impact that motherhood has had on my career and my pay and my opportunities for career advancement. But just in preparation for this webinar, I have read Jolie Brearley's book, The Motherhood Penalty, which kind of goes into the history of it and everything else. But to bring us bang up to date, right? Actually, today, in The Guardian, and also on the Pregnant Then Screwed website, there's absolute clear evidence about the pay gap between working fathers and mothers. And for me, the motherhood penalty, there's a lot to it, and there's a lot about access to affordable childcare and access to prevention of pregnancy discrimination. But a lot of it boils down to, for me, my understanding is the kind of entrenched differences between pay, which of course can lead to poverty. I mean, there's huge amounts of poverty currently in the UK. And a lot of that is to do with access to affordable childcare. So, a few things there about Cheryl. So,
and it's really interesting in terms of, that's really similar to the research that I've got in front of me, which is, estimates are that up to 80% of the gender pay gap is motherhood. That's some of the stats that I've seen. Obviously, that's like in the global survey. And in terms of why, it can be things like, we were talking about this yesterday. It can be that when women come back to the workplace, they have to adjust their hours, or, they're just treated differently. So some of it is potentially bias, or they have to take a different role, so there's a lot of that happening. It's quite complex, isn't it? There's a lot of factors that go into why this gap starts to open up.
Yes, I mean, it comes to, first of all, access to childcare, access to affordable childcare, the opportunity to be treated, without discrimination when you come back into the workplace. The opportunity, I mean, part-time work, all of the statistics out there, part-time work, whether it's the same role, when you look at the evidence, statistics outside of that's out there in the market, is less well paid than full-time work. But by the very nature of the caring responsibilities that tend to land more on women, they're the ones that potentially have to take the part-time work. But I guess, I mean, for me, what's really scared me is what I read today about what's actually happened in the last 12 months. I mean, we're talking about the difference in pay, and the difference in pay for full-time employees, that the difference for women is at 42% of women. So like care responsibilities mean that more women are more likely to work part-time compared to men. So that's 42% of women compared to 15% for men. And that the research, which is right out in the Guardian today, and it comes says that in the last 3 months of last year, mothers earned 43% less than fathers. So that's and that's increased over the last 12 months. So that's just huge.
It's like it's going backwards.
Yes, well, it's not being protected. It's not being concentrated on. It's not being focused upon. It's, there's huge attention being paid to the gender pay gap, and companies making an effort to recognise that and support it. But when you dig into the data, and I'm going to refer to Jolie Brearley's book again, and what I've researched is that, when women return to work, or when they're trying to progress their careers, that this decrease in salaries becomes entrenched.
It becomes entrenched. And there's something about it's interesting, because obviously there's the return to work element. Oh, and good morning to Joy, and good morning Sophia, and happy International Women's Day as well. They're joining us. There's something about, there's the returning to work bit, so when the kids are younger, and it's something we talked about yesterday, but it's not just the early years. So in this particular research, it says even for women whose children are teenagers, so women whose children are aged 13 to 17 spend on average 6.5 hours a day in the company of children. That could be looking after them, but also, doing housework, just being in their company, watching TV, taking part in leisure activities. And the men, so fathers, tend to spend 4 hours with the children. So even when the kids are older, the women tend to spend more time with the children, which again, that links to then your ability to not do extended hours, or maybe go to a conference or go and network or whatever it be. It's kind of insidious almost, isn't it? It kind of touches every aspect, even when the kids are a little bit older.
Well, and I mean, and also, when children are older, I haven't got the statistics in front of me, but I mean, I was a single parent for a significant amount of time while my children, were small and teenagers. So, that being a single parent has a huge impact on your ability to progress in your career and to be able to make some of the decisions that help you to progress. And I think because we're also talking about that kind of investment in time, flexibility is just essential. It's crucial. And I mean, I know you also mentioned about fathers there as well, and I think, and I know that this is a big call out, but having equal access to rights to time off for mothers and fathers. And I know that it's been built in a little bit, and I know that that's kind of a little bit, it's different depending on different organisations. But if there was true equality to access to having parental time off, I think that would do huge amounts to prevent the kind of pregnancy discrimination that can happen. And I mean, for some women, this will be the first time that they'll ever have experienced discrimination of any type. So
there's a few comments coming in that I'll just reference in. So Sophia has said, can we really make a dent in this basic human right, which is, I guess you're talking about there, Sophia, the right to to have a family, to be a mother. It seems to be depressing rather than progressing, or regressing rather than progressing. And then Marilo has said, just see if I can show that here, the family choice to expand the family also ends up putting a career pause into the mother's career while the man is progressing. One thing I imagine that could help to bridge this gap are longer full pay leaves and culture campaign for father to take them, because in Japan has it, and it is a cultural problem.
I mean, I think that's perfect there, what he said, because I mean, one of the things, and I know we're going to be perhaps talk a bit more positively at the end, but one of the things that would really address this is, for paternity leave to be paid at 90% of salary, 6 weeks.
Or 100%, right?
Well, 90% at least, all parental leave to be paid at national living wage. For childcare to cost no more than 10% of household income, and for funding to be accessible to all parents. So, and then all jobs to be advertised as flexible. And I know that companies do advertise roles as flexible, but I'd like to go one step further, and for companies to be able to say, how many of their jobs are flexible. What does flexibility look like in their organisation, and how is it accessed? I mean, I know that Jacobs is exceptionally there's exceptional flexible working practices, and that was something that was happening, before COVID, but since COVID, it's been even more.
It's interesting because Sophia's literally just dropped in a comment about COVID as well. The impact of COVID-19 has created some opportunities for women in the ability to work from home. Are there any stats to demonstrate this has benefited women? That's an interesting one, Sophia, in terms of the stats. I mean, we were talking about this yesterday, weren't we, Rebecca? I think what it has done is it's clearly proven that some roles could be done from home, because before COVID, a lot of people were being told your role can't be done from home. After COVID, it had proven that roles could be. However, there are some stats that suggested that, I think the stats were mixed, because I think, and Rebecca, you can chip in on this, but I think some stats suggested actually for some women it was quite challenging because they were doing things like homeschooling and all of that stuff at the same time. And even in terms of layoffs and things like that. So
totally. I mean, I think first of all, I feel so fortunate. I had a newborn baby in the house, which I didn't have to look after. So I was able to kind of carry on with my work. But
you just got to play with them at certain points of the day and then give them back to mom.
Yes, but my absolute heart, the fear that goes out to how women and men and families were able to cope in those terrible, trying times. With, whose job was the most important, who had to give up their time. But I do know from what the research that I've done, and it's out there, that the lots of parents were made redundant. So, I'm not talking about my company, but when you look at the percentage of parents that were made redundant during that COVID time, parents, it disproportionately fell on mothers again.
Yeah, agreed. And also, thinking back to it, I think just after COVID as well. So obviously we had the Great Resignation, but then we also had something that was being called the Great Breakup, where a lot of women in particular were almost like saying no to going back to a very rigid, kind of I've got no time for the kids, etc. kind of work environment. So I don't know whether, because obviously, a lot of companies are still, dragging people back into work and all of that. So Sophia, I don't know whether the jury is out yet on what that long-term impact has been, just because things are still kind of changing a little bit. We've got more companies mandating that people must come into the office 2 or 3 days, but some companies are bringing back clocking in into the office, all kinds of things. So I think the jury's out on that one. But
the point has got to be, though, about affordable childcare, right?
Yeah.
And
yes.
kind of the fact that there's been a 30% increase since 2023 of parents being plunged into debt to pay for childcare, something like 45%. And I'm also going to touch on, I know that France has just enshrined the right to abortion in their constitution, but I will also say that half of mothers who've had an abortion believe that access to affordable childcare was one of the reasons why they just did not feel that they were able to continue to expand their families.
Yeah, so, that's really interesting, and we're going to get onto that. I think the affordable childcare thing as well, and that link to it, but that is so important, because I think, and we'll come on to the paternity leave in a little bit, but the affordable childcare thing really does support single mothers as well as working parents, right?
Yeah. So my own experience was, when I had my son, I was working shifts as a computer operator, and I was not able, I became a single parent, and I wasn't able to continue in that role. And the childcare, was the same amount of money as my salary. So the only way that I was able to kind of get back into work, which is what I'd wanted to do, and I told myself that was what was going to happen, as because of having my son and being on my own, was I went into sales. I went into sales. So fortunately, commission helped me to survive. But and that was 3 decades ago. So because I was a teenage mom, childcare. I find it really difficult to understand how access to affordable childcare has been so dismantled and reduced women's opportunity to be able to access work easily. When I was having so much difficulty all those decades ago. And I really do feel for my own children growing up now with their own families, and they also haven't got access to the extended families of support either. So
because there is that thing about it takes a village, and from a childcare perspective, some of us either have or haven't been fortunate enough to have family around that maybe can do that, can do the grandparenting, and kind of like looking after. And that was something that you talked about. Do you see that as increasing in terms of that role for grandparents looking after?
Well, for me personally, I feel that I'm still kind of working and needing to and supporting my children financially. And I still see myself very much in that role because that's just the way that's what's had to happen in terms of kind of generational support. But I have heard anecdotally when I've talked to people about kind of access to childcare and some of the different ways around that. And some people have said that their granddads have stepped in and supported. I know that my own husband was able to support childcare for one of my children when they were learning to drive, which is also a privilege, because not many children can learn to do that nowadays. But if I certainly wasn't able to do it because I'm working full time, so I think there is a role, and sometimes that role actually potentially for fathers who may, like Murillo mentioned earlier, have been able to progress in their careers. When it comes to being kind of grandparents, granddads. Maybe they have got that, they've got more in their pension, they're able to retire, they're able to, they've got access to maybe some time at that end of their working lives that they can devote to their grandchildren to support, especially when they can see how people are struggling so much at the moment.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting. I think, you talk about that generational support, and I think that's the world that we're in, aren't we? Life can be pretty challenging. I mean, Sophia's put this question in, which I think is quite interesting. So do you have any comments on the impact on mothers and families with children and young people with disabilities? Which is an interesting one.
Yeah, I would just say that that's where support needs to be targeted the most. Yeah. And that's probably some statistics right now that I could access that would show the chronic levels of poverty and entrenched inequality that are happening there, with lack of access to support. There's, the kind of funding's been decimated. And a lot of it, unless we're reading about it in the papers or we know somebody who's in that situation, we're not finding out about it. There's lots of huge hidden pockets of poverty and inequality. And that question there about parents with disabled children, single parents, or people who it's very difficult. So thank you, Sophia, for asking that question, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to bring that to light. And remember, of course, when I was a single parent, there was huge vilification in the media about it, and it was not my choice. It was not my choice to be, to be bringing children into the world, on my own, and to be on my own, and to be in that situation, and the same,
And I think we will potentially start to see that a little bit more. The reason I say that is, so those of you that know, I've got a daughter who's 26, and we were talking yesterday. I won't embarrass her, but we were talking about the lack of the dating pool for 26-year-old women. But there are more women potentially that are choosing to have children as single moms, if that makes it. There's something about choice, and I can imagine that there's probably a little bit of vilification of that, where women have actively chosen that route for whatever reason. And it kind of links back to something that we talked about it quite a lot yesterday, and you mentioned it before, in terms of the France legal ruling this week about the right to abortion, which I hadn't heard of. And I've got to do a lot more
into
digging.
Their constitution. I mean, I think there's still some difficulties with it, in terms of time frames. But the fact that it's been put into their constitution as a constitutional right, our body, our choice, is something that is to be looked into.
Absolutely, and I thought it was worth mentioning, because things like the rights to contraception, rights to abortion, etc., they are fundamental pillars of women's independence. Whether and I'm just gonna say it because Rebecca might be a little bit shy to say it, but whether or not you are pro-life, pro whatever it be, but those have been proven across the globe to be fundamental to women's independence and women's rights. So just for me, I think it's a watershed moment that France have done that, and I did wonder how many countries might follow suit.
Well, I think for me, it's back to choice, but it's also about support. And I mean, Murillo, Murillo, I completely agree with you. Who's not all people have got access to grandparents. I know, I grew up in a single parent household myself, and my grandma, was also a single parent. So there's been no access to extended family. But when it comes to choice, I'm kind of firmly believe about women's rights to be able to access affordable childcare if they choose to be able to go to work, or access to be able to stay at home and look after their children, and to be able to afford to do that, and afford to eat, and afford to afford heating and everything else. You know, for me, it's about choice. I know that we wanted to come on to that, but support, and also understanding the impacts on families of this lack of support. You know, and the impact on children and everything as it goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk. We're going to get onto the paternity leave bit, because this is, and I know, and to be fair, we're probably talking more about, because I shared with you, I think, Rebecca, and if I remember, I'll drop it into the comments if I'm not too busy racing around for International Women's Day. But there's a really interesting paternity leave league table if people want to Google it, and it's fair to say that more organisations now are seeing the importance of this, but the companies at the top of that league table, companies like, for example, Diageo, Aviva, I can't remember some of the other ones, but they're paying, let's ignore the US for now, because that's not a good model of supporting parenting, but in the UK, they're paying, I think Google is up there as well, they're paying men 100% of their salary for 6 months. That is what the best companies are doing now in terms of paternity leave, which I think that's one element of it, the paternity leave policy, but also the culture. How do organizations create a culture where it's acceptable and it's just the norm that men get really involved in the childcare, and you see senior men, you know, taking extended paternity leave?
Yeah, I mean, it's equality, isn't it? I mean, I think from what I know from Jacobs, I know that they've got equal access to parental rights and parental leave, and I've absolutely seen people take advantage of that. I've also seen women come back to work while their partners and husbands have been taking the time off to be with the baby. And I know, you know, we've got a fantastic program, and I didn't mean to plug Jacobs because I wanted to talk about my own experience. But I mean, we've got a fantastic program which is bridging the gap between parents returning to work and actually being able to address a lot of those issues around being a parent, returning to work, accessing full-time hours, or maintaining your career prospects. You know, I've even known women be promoted while they've been on maternity leave. In Jacobs. So there's lots of,
that's good.
There's excellence in our organisation. But back to what it's like today on International Women's Day for, you know, a lot of women in the UK, a lot of families in the UK. And that is, you know, it's access to affordable childcare is something that I feel so passionate about it. And I know that they've made some promises, but I'm really hoping that, you know, when we have a change of government, that commitment to affordable childcare is absolutely entrenched. And this thing about it not being more than 10% of income, that's just got to be up there.
I've not heard that. I've not heard that before, but it's a good benchmark to set, isn't it? Really, because that does really state that it's affordable. You know, if you kind of match it to that percentage, particularly, you know, and as you mentioned before about sort of like living wage, and there's something about pegging it to that, you know, so that we have this framework of fairness and equity and access, etc.
And support for parents, right, as well. You know, just support for the family, support for their choices, for what they want to do, to, you know, for their children, whether they want to work or they want to stay at home. You know, that we're, you know, so many children have fallen into poverty. I mean, I know I know we're running out of time. Oh yes, but when I was, you know, when I had my children and I was a single parent, you know, the difference between making it and not making it, you know, was £20 a week, and I've been very vocal about that, you know, throughout my grown-up life, and that was what the money that was given during COVID to families, an extra £20 a week, and that was taken away, and it plunged hundreds of thousands of children back into poverty. I feel very strongly that we need to do something about that.
Definitely. Great, Laurie. Do you know, I've never spoken to somebody at Diageo about it, but Diageo has been at the top of that league table for a while. So proud of the offering we have in Diageo, and can see the number of males increasing across all levels using the full 6 months, opening up development opportunities across the business, seeing everyone thrive. And that's the key. We need to see the number of males increasing across all levels. So, do you know what?
Yes.
I'm so pleased, Laurie, that you've commented on that. Yeah, and it's a great, who doesn't want to work for an organisation that is doing the right thing? Let's talk about the importance of the flexible working bit as well. So talking, building on what is it that organisations can do. I relayed to you, Rebecca, yesterday that I was aware of an organisation where, the HR director still was sort of saying, oh, when my childcare is reduced during the summer holidays, I'm a little bit embarrassed to be walking out early because I've got to go and pick the kids up from school. So, what is it that organisations can do around flexibility to support working mums?
I think understanding all the different variations of what's needed, in terms of kind of, even when children are back at school, you've got the school holiday, nightmare to get through. There's illness, who takes time off for illness. It's that understanding about, what type of hours, is it working compressed hours? Is it working extended hours? Is it working, school time hours? It's about understanding that flexibility, and actually just kind of culturally understanding about the contribution that parents make. It's not necessarily a 9-to-5 model, and understanding about its output, rather than the kind of presenteeism, which a lot of companies have got that. I know that Jacobs is very forward thinking in that respect, but it's, everybody really needs to understand that flexibility isn't just it's kind of a benefit. It's an absolute, it's a bonus for everybody. That everybody can take care of, that they can take advantage of.
Absolutely. And I would just add into that as well. I mean, I think my personal view is that the 9-to-5 model is dead. I think the 9-to-5 model is dead. And I always encourage organisations when it comes to working hours, because I recognise the benefits of things like collaboration, and, there needs to be time when people are on at the same time and all that. I get it. But I always sort of say, empower local teams to figure out what works for them. Empower local teams to figure out, when do they need to be online together? When do they need to physically be in a building together? All of this mandating people to come back in X, Y, and Z day, and you then get people back in the office sitting on their own, doing Zooms to their colleagues. I just think, empower local teams, and let's take some of the stigma off, off flexible hours, because it's not the 9-to-5.
I mean, there is something about, being visible means getting access to kind of career opportunities and career promotions. There is something there in that, but maybe that's something for another time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, that is actually, because that's a whole nother topic, visibility in terms of career progress. Understand flexibility and believing in basic human rights for all is essential, as well as believing and investing in people. You said something yesterday, Rebecca, in our prep call. You were talking about the additional skills actually often that mothers come back into the workplace with, in terms of efficiency, productivity, organising oneself, getting things done, juggling, all of that.
I read an amazing statistic just really today, again, actually, about women, how women are kind of consistently coming out of school, college, university with good grades and with the qualifications. They're investing in their learning, they're investing in their self-learning, they're investing in, when they look at the percentages, women are more likely to have access to higher education or a course of some kind of self-development in the last 6 months. But consistently women are still kind of not getting paid as well and as much, and when it brings it back to, when they look at it side by side, actually the discrepancies between kind of mothers and kind of and people who are, and women who aren't mothers, that kind of pay discrepancy isn't as wide as the motherhood penalty.
And the one thing that I'm going to say, so we're going to finish off. The final question is what we can do as individuals to value the mothers that we know. But before I'm going to get onto that, I'm just going to say, in terms of sort of linking into Sophia's point around believing and investing in people, there's something about allyship and advocacy. So if you're an organisation, you're sitting in meetings to discuss the development opportunities of individuals, or you're placing individuals, or you're putting people forwards for projects, don't forget the mothers, right? Be that person in the room that speaks up and really looks objectively at who can do this thing, rather than going for the usual suspect and discounting the mothers in the team.
Yes, and I guess I would say that this is really about understanding kind of unconscious bias when it comes potentially to pregnancy, to motherhood, to childcare responsibilities, and it's actually recognizing and supporting parents. And and for people to understand their rights. So, for example, I read today that you've got parents have got access to 18 weeks, although it's unpaid, so it's a privilege, but 18 weeks up to the age of 18 to take off, to look after, to be with, to support their child under 18. So up to 18 weeks in that 18-year span that they can spend with their child, and that's for mothers and fathers. So it's just understanding what you're legally entitled to, and then being able to take advantage of that, and then really trying to interrupt that bias that the burden falls on moms.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the final question then, what can we do as individuals to value the mothers that we know? So what can we do? What more can we do?
I guess one of the best pieces of advice that was given to me when I was a mom was just to have days you just say yes. So I think on Sunday or whenever, or when you need a break, just say yes. Just say yes and just relax and let the children just kind of come up with their own fun. And I think prioritizing your own well-being, and not that all the extra burden of work, all of the housework and everything else. And the most important thing, Cheryl, which I really need to get across, is about guilt. Is absolutely really do everything you can to remove that guilt out of your mind. Guilt about whether you're doing a good job as a mom, guilt whether you're doing a good job at work, guilt about whether you're being a good partner. Just to absolutely do everything you can to reduce those feelings of guilt, because everybody's doing the best that they can. Mothers are, and fathers and families are under exceptional pressure at the moment, and we just have to really open our eyes, do our research, and support the people around us.
So that's the advice out there to all the mums. I can't second that enough. Put your feet up, on Mother's Day. Take that rest, and I would add into that as well, as somebody who is sometimes not always the best at asking for help. I would say ask for help and support when you need it. Don't feel, it kind of links to Sophia's point around women being breadwinners as well. There's something about, often we feel a lot of pressure, and sometimes we feel the pressure to appear as though we've got it all together, and I suffer from that, right? So as women, don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to say to people, I'm not okay,
I mean, there's this horrific trope, which I've always experienced, and still people will still say, oh, you're so strong, the strong black woman stereotype, and the one that we almost feel, okay, well, let me live up to that, let me be that strong black woman then, let me keep on being that strong black woman, or here I am being the strong black woman. Actually, no, I'm not a strong black woman, not today. I don't have to be. I can be mediocre. I don't have to always be the best version of myself. And when I need help, I'm going to ask for it.
Exactly. I love that. Final comment here from Sophia. Health and well-being is key. Life is so short. For sure. Work is important, but not to the detriment of your health and relationships. I love that. So bringing in a bit of balance there. And for me, this weekend, today, in terms of International Women's Day, and on Sunday, it's a perfect time to remember that. And Marilo has said, Mother's Day, I usually gift my mom with a spa day. I'm going to be sending these comments to my daughter because I think she needs to up again.
She just wants you to childcare. She wants you to get involved in childcare for when she decides to have a baby.
She wants me to babysit her dog. That's what she wants.
Right.
She wants me to dog. That's what I'm doing on Saturday. On Saturday, I'm dog sitting for my daughter. Rowley's put here: become intentional about appreciating the women in your life. Don't appreciate in silence. Communicate in words why they are here with you and here for you. I love that, Rowley.
That is such a blessing, Rowley, as well, isn't it? Because it is about appreciation. I remember when I had my 4 children, and I still have them, but when they were small, and the worry and the chronic worrying that used to happen. We really need to appreciate that that's what's happening around us. So we need to vocalize that, and to vocalize it, and to support each other. really support each other. It's
sure.
easy to forget now I'm on the other side and I haven't got small children at home. You know, and I'm successfully past the menopause and all of that, you know, here I am in my full power. And it is easy to forget those terrible struggles of early motherhood and parenthood. And we do definitely have to appreciate all of the women around us and to support and help wherever we can.
Yeah, and I would add that, you know, I know that obviously there's been a lot of love and support and stuff on LinkedIn. I would encourage you to, like, you know, pick up the phone or go and sit and have a coffee or whatever it be, you know, with the women in your life this weekend, and especially the moms. Rebecca, final word to you.
Right, I just wanted to say that I've got 4 grown-up children, but I've also got 4 grandchildren and 1 on the way. So they're 4, age 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. So,
oh my goodness me.
Yes,
you're growing the empire. My grandmother used to be like that. She used to be like, you know, patois. She used to be like, "Me have 20-something grandchildren." You know, she like had like because she had 10 children. My grandma.
Wow,
right.
That's
and there was a lot of, you know. So yeah. So she used to love kind of talking about her empire that she built.
But I guess
intentional.
But I guess what I mean by that is that, you know, I can see what's happening in terms of childcare and access to opportunities and everything else, and that's given me an insight. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone that's joined us, and for all of your comments about, you know, giving flowers and communicating and telling people how much we appreciate them. Rebecca, thank you so much for this. It's been a gift. It really has been a gift, and such a perfect topic, and the perfect person to have this conversation with as well.
And perfect. You're perfect as well, Cheryl. Thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you for being such a great interviewer. And it's really been well, what is it? That's that terrible mem. But I'm going to say honoured and privileged to be here today.
Honoured and privileged.
I am.
Humble and proud.
That's right. That's right. I am.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have an amazing rest of day, and have an amazing weekend, everybody. Take care. Bye.
Great. Take care.